In this video, we're going to talk about psychometric testing. These are the tests you might use to help you decide if you're going to hire someone or not. They seem to have fallen a little out of favor, and I'm wondering about that. The answers to some of these questions are coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On the show, you get expert insight into anything that has to do with HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. Today, my guest is Marina Kolesnikova. I met Marina years ago when she did an assessment of me, and it's something that's sort of stuck with me throughout my career. And so when it got to having this discussion, of course, I'm going to have it with Marina. Hi, Marina. How are you?
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for saying that. I hope that the assessment had some impact on you. It definitely was predictive given that how successful you become. We were predicting success. That was done many years ago. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really interested in our conversation and hope we will discuss interesting and challenging questions related to testing, how we add value to our clients, and as you mentioned about the science behind the testing. And I would like to start with introducing myself and our firm. I'm a business psychologist and a partner with Stefan, Fraser and Associates. All of our psychologists have PhD in psychology, typically industrial or clinical psychology, and we all are licensed. We are registered psychologists in BC. Our area of expertise, if we talk about education, is in the science of individual differences. We have an in-depth understanding of the range of human behaviors, skills, characteristics, and how to measure this. And we use this knowledge as well as the knowledge of psychometrics to provide our clients with the best approach, science-based approach, how to measure those qualities and how to select and hire successful candidates.
So it does seem to me, as I mentioned in the intro, that these things have fallen out of favor. Why do you think that is?
Andrea, I'm not sure that it's correct. It's at least not for our clients, because we've given the demand, and those clients who have been using our service for a long time, they know what they can get and how it adds value to their selection processes.
Right.
And we're talking about senior leaders, and like in any other HR managers, know how costly it is to bring a wrong or a leader who is not a good fit for their organization. So therefore, with our clients, we have I would say, proven track record in terms of helping them with selection. Having said that, if you think about current reality, some of our clients, they really experience a shortage of labor. It's hard to find candidates for different positions. Partially, it's maybe a post-COVID environment and situation. And under these circumstances, assessment may be perceived as they may be less needed. It's not that less valid or less accurate, but they may be less needed because it's really hard to find the candidate. Unfortunately, it will result in creating more problems. For example, will be revolving door in the organization. If it's a bad or wrong candidate, it will result in lower morale in the company. And bottom line, the company pay even more in terms of recruitment and selecting candidate because it wasn't the best candidate from the first start. So we are optimistic and hopeful that it's not necessarily true.
Okay.
And we will hope continue with providing assessments.
Okay. Maybe it's fallen a little bit out of favor because there's so many quizzes online and there's so many different options, and they all are promoting their value and their validity. So when a client comes to you and they have an employee or a prospective employee do a test, how is it different than going to quiz.com and doing quizzes there, or even Myers Briggs?
In terms of quiz.com, it's not a test. If we really go to the core of the matter, it's a quiz. Okay, they don't have validity, they don't have reliability. You don't know what you measure with this test. And certainly this test does not predict job success as much as we can predict with proven psychometric tests.
Okay.
And in reality, if you use a quiz or unknown test, it will mislead you in terms of making decisions based on this kind of test. Myers Briggs, it's a great example because, again, everyone knows Myers Briggs, but Myers Briggs, again, it's not a psychometric test, it's a typology. It's a personality typology, which was designed to help people understand core personality characteristics and how people can differ in those characteristics. For example, extraversion. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're distinguishing a psychometric test from typology. And this is actually probably a revelation for me today, right now. So can you just articulate the difference between those two things?
Absolutely. I would like to use this example as Myers Briggs because everyone knows what we're talking about. So there are 4 dimensions, and there are distinct characteristics on each dimension, like extraversion, introversion. But the thing is that in reality, most people are neither extroverted nor introverted. There is a bell curve on any characteristic.
Right.
We have several people who are very extroverted and a group of people who are very introverted, but in between there is a continuation of this characteristic.
Right.
And besides, even this particular dimension does not measure extroversion and introversion. Okay, it just you will be in one another category, and there are lots of behaviors which are associated with this category, but it's not a measurement of extroversion per se. There is a very also sometimes confusion that extroverts are more successful in the organizations, they promote their career, they're just really, in terms of their job fit, it's easier for them to find a job. But in reality, extroversion or introversion do not predict job success. We've done lots of research, especially in the production environment. And sometimes people confuse between extroversion and actually good social skills, communication skills, ability to develop rapport and build relationship. It's not necessarily directly related.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Like, those, aren't they the same thing? Apparently, they're not the same thing.
Not exactly. And it's a very good descriptive questionnaire. And it's really about proper utilization of this test. It's used, as you probably know, with the group exercises, and people are fascinated how they're different from each other in terms of this core characteristic.
Right.
But that is it. If we really discourage our clients use this test for making decisions, and this test is available for the general public. The tests we use with our assessment, they are really restricted to psychologists. And there is a reason for that. We need to understand psychometric characteristics of the tests, such as validity, reliability, predictive accuracy.
Right.
With our assessments, we combine the test. We use a test battery. It's almost never one single test that we use for doing our assessments. Mm-hmm. If we talk more about legality of using tests, our assessment or test battery are usually fair, they're defensible, and they are unbiased. We have lots of clients who have unionized workforce, and we've served as expert witnesses on the selection systems when it comes to arbitration. So this days maybe we're thinking a bit less about it, but in reality, it's another side of doing the right testing, making sure that whatever you use will be fair and will be unbiased.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk stats for a moment then, because you already mentioned some and you talked about them being proven. So that someone understands that the tests they're using are proven, that they are valid and all of that stuff. Can you explain some of these statistical terms we should know?
Absolutely. There are lots of them, but probably two key characteristics, such as reliability and validity.
Okay.
Reliability is about the quality of the test, and it tells you whether you can reproduce the same result upon retesting. And coming back to Myers Briggs, you can take the same test in a month or several years, and you will be, or even in a year, you will have different results. So this test is not very reliable. Validity tells you how accurate the test is. Does it measure what it is supposed to measure? And those characteristics are extremely important, and it tells you how good this test is. There are lots of different types of reliability and validity, but what is important for us and for our clients is to understand the predictive validity of the test. And when we refer to predictability, it means that the extent to which you score on the scale on a test predicts the score on the criterion measures, for example, job performance.
Right.
As a good example, a test of cognitive ability, a test of intelligence. The higher the result on the test, that we expect the higher performance in the real world. So in this correlation, it's quite a complex statistical analysis when we try to understand this correlation. It usually ranges from -1, which is perfect negative, to +1, which is perfect positive correlation. In psychometrics, they do not exist, -1 or +1.
Right.
The best test when we can find in our test battery, for example, has predictability 0.6. It's considered to be a very high correlation and validity for this test. For a typical test, you can look at personality that will be 0.2. It's extremely low.
So if we go back to Myers Briggs, I don't know if you know what the predictive validity of Myers Briggs is, but it's low. Are you saying?
It is low. It doesn't exist at all because, it's low because the test wasn't designed to predict job performance. There is no correlation between Myers Briggs results on Myers Briggs and actual performance. So if you're interested, I can show you. I can share my screen and show you some of the coefficients predictability in terms of different tools. So here we have this. It's correlations in hiring. And this, you see this predictive correlations coefficient. It starts with graphology. Obviously, no one uses graphology. It's almost like a joke, but many years ago, it was one of the tools which was used for hiring. So then we have years of education and training education. As you can see, it's a very low predictability, 0.1. Unstructured interview, the same, it's 0.15. And then you will a bit lower, you will see structured interview, which is 0.35. So it's such a big difference between unstructured and structured interviews, how they can predict job success. Personality testing, we're talking about really well researched and developed personality testing. It's not quiz.com, definitely.
Is it? And it's not, it's not also, sorry to interrupt here, but it's not also Myers Briggs, because you said Myers Briggs is very low. So what kind of personality test would have this level of validity?
Most of them, they are restricted to psychologists. For example, California Psychological Inventory that we use as part of our assessments, or a number of tests which are designed and distributed by test publishers. We're talking about sciences, about psychologists and psychometricians who design and distribute this test on the market. But again, when I say distribute, it's not for the general public. It's mostly for registered psychologists. And then you have a general mental ability test, which is cognitive test or general intelligence. We use this term almost in the same way, which has the highest predictability, 0.45 or 0.5. And it's a well-known fact in our field that general intelligence is the best predictor of job success. and we have multi-test profiling systems, like similar to what we're using with the validity of 0.65. And I explained to you why we have significant jump here. I will just go to the next slide. The next slide shows what will happen in terms of predictability if we combine two measures.
Okay.
For example, intelligence still remains on the top. So if we combine intellectual test with any of the other tools, if we combine intelligence and personality test, the coefficient raises up to 0.65. And why is it so? Because personality and intelligence they do not correlate with each other. If you think about people, you can have a very bright individual, but if they don't have people skills, they're not successful. It doesn't mean the bright people have good people skills, and vice versa, the other way around. So we measure very different aspects of human beings, and by combining this personality and intelligence, we have predictability coefficient 0.65 roughly. So if we combine intelligence and employment interview, we have around 0.55 coefficient. Okay, but Andrea, if you think about employment interviews, they, for the most part, they indirectly measure intelligence. The question we use in the interview, it will be around, give me an example when you had a problem, how you solve the problem, how you learn. So they really indirectly measure the same qualities or characteristics which can be measured with intellectual tests. So what I'm saying in this formula of combining intelligence and interview, intelligence is doing a heavy lifting, not interview. But still, you can have really bump in predictability to 0.55. And the same is about other tools. For example, reference check, which in itself has very low predictability, especially these days. It's very difficult to do reference check. In combination with intelligence, it's bumped to 57. But again, because it's intelligence, it's not that reference check becomes more accurate or more in-depth. So that is what is our expertise is partially. It's really, we know how to select and combine different tools or different measures to increase predictability and therefore to increase the accuracy of the assessment.
If you've learned something, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. Have you used this kind of psychometric testing? And if so, how successful was it? Tell us about it in the comment section. Next question here. So when you're doing these tests, like you said, it was interesting. You said that in an interview, you're actually kind of measuring intelligence. But when you're doing the tests, what are you actually measuring?
A very good question. It's we can measure basically any kind of human characteristics or personality characteristics or ability or skills. The main question is what we would like to measure, and the answer to this question depends on the particular position the candidate is being considered for.
Right.
For entry-level positions, we design selection systems or selection tools, and it requires us to do certain steps like doing job analysis and identifying competencies. So that is what we are going to measure once we identify those competencies. For example, ability to solve problems, safety orientation, interpersonal skills, team skills, motivation, stress tolerance. It really depends on the particular position that we design selection system for. When it comes to professional and management assessment, it's not a selection tool. Here we really conduct an individual assessment, which is a process. As the part of this process includes assigning a battery of tests, but it's not enough, it's not sufficient. We usually understand the requirements of this position as well as the bigger picture, where the person would fit, what is the culture, what's the history of this particular position, especially when it comes to senior leadership positions in the organization. We contact an individual who is going to do the tests and describe the process. And once the tests have been completed, we conduct an interview. And maybe I will tell you that how our interview is different from an employment interview. We are interviewing with the test results in front of us. So we frame lots of hypotheses just based on the test results without seeing the person.
Right.
And we look for consistency between how the person described themselves and what we see in the test results. Okay. We may probe deeper in the areas of inconsistencies. And when we conduct the interview once, the next step is we give feedback. My favorite one is when the candidate says, well, my wife would agree with you. That you know that you're likely being on. You don't need to do predictive validation. It's likely will be accurate assessment. Right. And that's also we see how we contribute to the selection process with our clients, because most people want to learn about themselves, regardless of whether they're hired or not. Yeah. Then we write a report. It's very comprehensive, it's complex, it has both quantitative and qualitative components. And with our reports, we designed, developed over the years what we call the Management Potential Index. So it's a score. It's a score which tells our clients, is it a high or low, below average candidate for a particular position? But we also will spell it out. We explain and we describe what we see in the test results that client here can make a decision.
Final question here. So we've talked a lot about all the things you can predict, and it looks like a lot of things. What can't you predict?
Well, first of all, we cannot predict what we cannot measure. For example, we don't measure technical skills.
Okay, yes.
We do an assessment for a mechanical engineer or second-class power engineer, but we really don't measure their technical knowledge. They have a ticket, but it doesn't mean they're good at what they're doing. Another thing, predictive accuracy, as I mentioned, for example, is 0.65. It's not perfect.
Right.
So there's a lot of components that we cannot measure, we cannot predict. And those are usually objective factors. They are unknown at this point. For example, there can be new CEO, new senior leaders in the organization. They may impact the success of this particular individual. Person may get into divorce, or there may be some other things.
Right.
So the team, how it's fit to the team, as much as we try to understand it before we start doing an assessment, still it may be an unknown factor. So those characteristics we cannot measure, and therefore we cannot predict this portion of a candidate's success when we do an assessment.
Thanks, Marina. That was so fascinating, and getting an insight onto all of those things, which is rarely something we talk about. I did an episode on other elements of the recruitment debate, and that link is right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.